Hello, and welcome to Alexa's Room, where we are not lawyers, we are not medical professionals, we are not law enforcement, we are just people who have opinions about all things going on in the true crime community, including what the heck is going on with the Karen Reed case and what the heck is going on with the Alec Baldwin trial. Because, my friends, that trial has just kicked off today with opening statements, with the defense having a very interesting theory about what happened, but we will get to that in a minute. First, I want to get into the Karen Reed news because a fourth juror has come forward about the real split of counts 1 and counts 3, thus confirming what the other 3 sworn affidavits had to say as well too. I actually posted this first thing in the morning as soon as I found out from Ted Daniels' tweet. I think he posted it, and like 5 minutes later, I was like, okay, I gotta get this out in case I can't get to a video today. But I wanted to make sure I got that news out to you. So if you missed my post on my community tab, don't worry, we're gonna read through the entire affidavit right now. But just to catch you up to speed, Canton was very spicy last night. Kevin Albert, we found out, has been suspended with pay since June 13th. Why we're just finding this out now? Probably because they were hoping for a guilty verdict, but who knows? And then they could wipe their hands and just reinstate him like nothing ever happened. Who the heck knows? But that was news that we reported on yesterday. I will link that video in the description below if you didn't have a chance to catch up on that. And Chris Albert, he speaks as well too, not just on the stand, but to his community of fans, right? Cantonites. He gave a fake apology. Um, it, he gave a pretty fake apology about his verbal assault towards Turtle Boy a couple of weeks back in front of CF McCarthy's. I kept saying in my past video CJ McCarthy's. I think it's because we had another McCarthy's bar back on Long Island, so I always get the two mixed up. But CF McCarthy's, and in front of his store D&E Pizza. So that is all covered in yesterday's video, and also it got pretty spicy at the select board meeting. We have another follow-up clip from that. So we will get to the Karen Reed news first, and then we'll get into the Baldwin. All right, let's dive into this affidavit. Okay, defendant Karen Reed's supplemental memorandum in support of her motion to dismiss. Now comes the defendant, Karen Reed, by and through undersigned counsel, and hereby respectfully submits the supplemental memorandum in support of her motion to dismiss, filed July 8th, 2024, as reflected in the attached affidavit of Alan J. Jackson, a fourth deliberating juror, Juror D, has now confirmed that the jury reached not guilty verdicts on count 1 and count 3. Alan Jackson, affidavits 5, or paragraph 5, excuse me. Once they were dismissed, many of the jurors appeared uncomfortable with how things ended. That's interesting. That's the first time that we heard that specific language. Wondering, is anyone going to know that we acquitted Karen Reed on count 1 and 3? No one ever asked about those counts. Interesting. Juror D told counsel part of his or her discomfort was that he or she knew that the jury had reached verdicts on 2 counts, and Karen Reed might be retried on those 2 counts, and that just isn't right. That's just not right. No, it's not. No, it's not. Honestly, I mean, it's amazing that these people they take their job seriously, and that's amazing. Juror D further stated, every one of us will agree and acknowledge that we found Karen Reed not guilty of counts 1 and 3 because that's what happened. And that's consistent with the other 3 sworn affidavits. Okay. Based on the attached affidavit and all of the reasons set forth in its opening motion, and the fact that the disclosures of Juror D completely confirm the veracity of the previously filed affidavits regarding jurors A, B, and C, the defense respectfully renews its contention that the jury acquitted Miss Reed on counts 1 and 3, or alternatively, there was no manifest necessity, manifest necessity for a mistrial as to those counts, and therefore the double jeopardy protections of the federal and state constitutions require that those counts not be retried. Short, sweet, and to the point. But I really wanna go back to they felt uncomfortable. They felt uncomfortable that no one ever asked, and it remember, I don't know if you guys remember too, but after and I won't pull this clip up, but, um, after Bev declared a mistrial and she said, "Hey, your service is complete, like, thank you so much, I'll be in a few minutes to just talk things over with you." I recall a couple of lawyers who were live streaming at the time remarking that this is pretty standard, usually they just have a moment, kind of like I almost feel like kind of locker room talk post game, like, "Hey guys, you did really good. We really appreciate it. Good game, good game, good game." Um, so I wonder, did what went down? Could Bev be a potential witness? If I mean, if there's a hearing, if there's in the retrial, I just don't know. Will she have to recuse herself? I don't know. But the fact that the jurors felt uncomfortable and they felt, hey, nobody ever asked us about these things. Everybody online is circulating all these rumors about what the split was. I can't live with myself if I don't come clean, if I don't clear my conscience. And the fact that there's so many people still online trying to say, "Oh, it's just the defense trying to bully and intimidate people." Why? They got the mistrial. Not that that's a victory, of course, but why? Why would they risk it on their careers too? These are very highly intelligent, very well paid, very successful lawyers. Why would they risk their career on something like that? And just pay I don't That's just my take. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. But that was the bombshell news that came out first this morning. And then I just exited Twitter. Dang it. I saw this other video clip. This was actually brought to my attention by one of you guys, actually, about the Canton Select Board meeting last night, where a Canton police officer was grabbing one of the peaceful protesters who was trying to speak. They tried to cut her off and say, "Oh, you ran out of time." And I didn't really see at the time what the big freaking deal was about her going a few minutes over time. Apparently, that's a crime. And that means, yeah, you get thrown out of the room because you're trying to be a rebel rouser when really it's like, who cares? Why does it matter if she goes over a few minutes? You're listening to your people. Like, if anything, what if anything? Probably be better if you just let them speak what they had to say, but that's just my opinion. So I want to pull up this clip because at the time, the stream we were looking at, we weren't able to get this view, but it's just like, it's just insane what's going on. And this is from what, NBC 10?
Speakers going over the public comment time limit get time and quickly turn chaotic. Take your hands off. Speakers going over the public comment time limit getting heated and quickly turn chaotic. Take your hands off. Speakers going over the public comment time limit getting heated and quickly turn chaotic. Take your hands off. Speakers going over the public comment time limit getting heated.
Like he's got like a grip on her shirt. I don't know if you guys can see this because of the sign. The sign's kind of blocking it, but if you look right there, he's got a tight grip on her shirt. Like, there's not one. Didn't your mama teach you to never put your hands on a woman? Didn't your mama teach you that? But two, I mean, dude, that's not a good look. Like, one, you know that there's cameras everywhere. You know this is super high profile. Like, come on now. It's not the best way to handle your crowd. And then following after this, I think it was pretty much right after this, the crowd settles a little bit, and then Chris Albert comes out with his gross apology. Like, come on now. That what are you people doing? So I just wanted to show that clip because again, it's like this runs deeper and I feel like these people are just so entitled. They're so power hungry, like, oh, I can just do whatever I want because I got a gun and a badge and it's my town. It's my town. But it's their town too. It's their town too. And you shouldn't be putting your hands on people when they're not putting their hands on anybody else. You're so afraid of their words, you're so afraid of what they have to say, you're so afraid that people aren't afraid of you. Like, come on now, not the right move, Canton. Not the right move, guys. So that was that news. But now I want to get into the Baldwin stuff. This was opening statements, and when I say that the defense had an interesting theory, let me just get a sip of water. They had a very interesting theory. Their whole defense seems like it's going to be, but Baldwin's just an actor. If you guys haven't been following this case, I'm just kind of jumping new into this case. I loosely followed the Hannah Gutierrez Reed case early. I think that was earlier this year. Loosely followed that. I believe she's going to be testifying in this trial, which will be very interesting. And there's already speculation that Alec Baldwin is going to take the stand. Whether that's a good idea, I mean, I don't think it is, because there's so many people that are off put by actors in general. But specifically Baldwin, he's just always had, I don't know, the Baldwins have a specific personality, and I don't necessarily feel one way towards them or another. But Stephen Baldwin, brother Baldwin, was there sitting sitting in the pews with Hilaria. So I mean, I don't know. The whole thing I was wondering is like, where's Haley and Bieber? Oh God, that would be a media storm for sure. But yeah, the defense's theory is he's just an actor, because during the pretrial hearing, the judge had dismissed the producer role. So Alec Baldwin was also a producer on the movie Rust, as well as being the lead actor. I also believe he wrote the script, or had a hand in writing the script as well too. And to my understanding, they completed the film. So it was it was a very interesting opening statement by the defense. They even played part of the film, which was kind of off-putting to all of us. So we're going to get into all of that right now, starting with the prosecution. And let me know what you guys think. Have you been following along with this case? If so, what do you think? Do you think Baldwin stands a chance? Do you think he's going to get off scot-free? Do you think he's responsible? Do you think he should even be charged with manslaughter? Let me know.
Good morning. When someone plays make-believe with a real gun in a real-life workplace, and while playing make-believe with that gun violates the cardinal rules of firearm safety, people's lives are endangered, and someone could be killed. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what this case is about. It's simple, it's straightforward. The evidence will show.
So just to stop real quick, to my understanding, this is a newer attorney that was added to the prosecution's team as well. I don't believe she was on the Hannah Gutierrez Reed case. So
That someone who played make-believe with a real gun and violated the cardinal rules of firearm safety is the defendant, Alexander Baldwin. You will hear over the course of the next few days that in the fall of 2000.
there's Stephen. There's Stephen Baldwin, and there's Hilaria.
2021, a movie called Rust began filming at the Bonanza Creek Ranch just south of Santa Fe in Santa Fe County. You will learn that this movie was a Western with a lot of gun action. And while it was a movie set, it was a real-life workplace for many people. But you will hear this workplace was on a tight budget. And you will learn that some of the people who were hired to work at this workplace were very inexperienced. And one of those was the armorer, a very young woman named Hannah Gutierrez Reed. You will hear testimony from crew members who worked on the set, who will tell you that to them, Ms. Gutierrez's inexperience was obvious. You will also learn that this workplace has some.
And apparently she's the daughter, too, of one of the most renowned armorers in Hollywood, which I didn't know. So, I mean, imagine just the weight you have to carry behind that, and knowing that everybody knows who your dad is and he's just so well renowned. Can't imagine the amount of pressure, but still. Ugh.
Talented people. And one of those was the director of photography, a vibrant 42-year-old rising star named Helena Hutchins. You will also learn that the director of this film was Joel Souza, another talented individual who cares deeply for his projects. The evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that like in many workplaces, there are people who act in a reckless manner and place other individuals in danger and act without due regard for the safety of others. That, you will hear, was the defendant, Alexander Baldwin, the lead actor on this film.
Is Stephen Baldwin squinting or is he sleeping? Because there are moments throughout this trial where it looked like not even just Stephen, but Alec was, or Alexander. Alexander was also sleeping. So I don't.
You will learn that this movie began filming on or about October 6, 2021. But the defendant did not arrive on set to begin working until about October 13th. And you will learn that prior to arriving on the set to work, he requested to be assigned the biggest gun available.
Are you having trouble trying to keep up with your professor?
No, we are not having trouble with that.
This revolver, a replica of an 1873 single-action revolver manufactured by Pieta Firearms in Italy. You will hear from Alessandro Pieta, who will tell you he manufactured this gun. And he will tell you he manufactured it in 2015. And he will explain the quality control measures that Pieta Firearms follows in order to ensure that firearms that are manufactured by Pieta Firearms don't have any problems or issues. Mr. Pieta will tell you that this firearm he himself manufactured, and that when Pieta sent it to EMF, which is the company that distributes firearms for Pieta Firearms in the United States, this gun was in perfect working condition. You will hear from Justin Neal, who is a representative of EMF, a company out of California that has historically been known to provide firearms to the movie industry. Mr. Neal will tell you that when EMF received this firearm in 2017, it was in perfect working order. And in fact, when EMF had this firearm, it was subjected to numerous quality control inspections because it was used as a show gun at gun shows. The evidence will show that in September of 2021, an individual by the name of Seth Kenny was contacted by the folks with Rust Production. They asked Mr. Kenny if he would be able to provide some firearms for use during the filming of Rust. You will learn that Mr. Kenny owns PDQ Firearm and Prop. It's a duly licensed firearms dealership. Mr. Kenny then contacted EMF and ordered several single-action replica revolvers. And in September, or on September 29, 2021, Mr. Kenny purchased this gun. And you will hear that Mr. Kenny received it from EMF, and it was in perfect working order. The only thing that Mr. Kenny did to this gun was to insert the firing pin, because since it was a show gun, it didn't have a firing pin. But you'll learn that that's a very easy step. All he had to do was just insert the pin, and that's it. And then Mr. Kenny had the firearms, this one and some other firearms, transferred to the set of Rust at the Bonanza Creek Ranch. And on October 13th, 2021, the defendant was supposed to have a training session with this gun and this young armorer. But you will see that during this training session, the defendant had somebody or a couple of people filming him while he's running around shooting this gun. You will learn, ladies and gentlemen, or you'll hear during this trial, the use of the words prop gun. And you'll learn a prop gun is this real gun. It's not a toy. It's not made of rubber. It's a real gun.
I just wonder, like, the biggest thing that's come up too, especially with today's day and age, because you're going to get into live rounds and how there shouldn't have been a live round on the set. Like, why do we need live rounds? We don't, especially with like computer graphics today. Like, you can do like really incredible stuff. Even with AI, you can do incredible stuff. So it feels like even back in, this took place in 2021, just so much of what happened in this incident just didn't need to happen. And I don't know. I don't know where I sit right now, but I feel like it's going to be really, really difficult for the prosecution to make their case without the producer role being in.
You will also see evidence, ladies and gentlemen, that during the days before that fateful October 21st day, the defendant handled this firearm multiple occasions. You will see video footage of the defendant firing this firearm, working perfectly fine. But you'll see evidence, ladies and gentlemen,
But I
that
wonder
each
if those
time
were
the
live
defendant
rounds.
handled this firearm, he did not do a safety check with that inexperienced armorer. And you'll hear that the reason he didn't do a safety check is because he didn't want to offend her. The evidence you will see will paint a real-life picture of a real-life workplace where this defendant mishandled this gun. You will see him using this gun as a pointer to point at people, to point at things. You will see him cock the hammer when he's not supposed to cock the hammer. You will see him put his finger on the trigger when his finger's not supposed to be on the trigger. You will hear about numerous breaches of firearm safety with this defendant and this use of this firearm. And the evidence will show that on the morning of October 21st, 2021, the camera crew walked off set. And you will learn that one of the reasons that camera crew walked out is because they were concerned over safety breaches with the use of firearms. The evidence will show that the morning of October 21st started out a couple of hours behind. They filmed some scenes at this church on the Bonanza Creek Ranch. And you will see that one of those scenes required the defendant to pull out his gun. This was in the morning. Pull out his gun. And you'll hear the director tell him, pull it out and hold it. And the first time, you'll see evidence the defendant does what the director tells him. But you will hear the director tell you that many times the defendant would do his own thing. So then the director in the morning asked him, okay, do it again, just like you did now.
I mean, that sounds very Baldwin-esque.
The defendant pulls out the gun, but this time he cocks the hammer. The evidence will show they then broke for lunch. And around 1:30 or so, they came back to this church to do what's called a blocking. The evidence will show that Ms. Hutchins wanted to do a blocking for an insert. And you will learn what a blocking is, just working out the details of the moves of the actor. It wasn't even a rehearsal. You will hear from one of the witnesses who walked into the church and saw the defendant kind of playing with his gun. And then you will see evidence or hear evidence that Ms. Hutchins and Mr. Souza were talking to the defendant about doing this insert. And the insert was just supposed to be from here to here. And it was supposed to be of the defendant just slowly taking his gun out of his holster, and just.
So sorry, I was just Googling too because I was curious. For a very, very short stint, I used to work in the independent film industry. So I was curious what the budget was, because that is going to be a big point that the prosecution. I'm sorry, I don't have this on full screen. But that was a big point of contention for the prosecution, especially with making their cases. Baldwin was known on set to constantly be rushing and berating a lot of the crew, and I don't know about the other cast members, but a lot of the crew to get a move on, get things going. Come on, let's go, because he was also wearing a producer hat as well too. So you have to think in the back of his mind, he's thinking not only like an actor, but he's also thinking like a producer, and I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle for the prosecution to get over. I know I already said that, but the budget for the Rust movie was $8 million. It's not a lot of money. It's a very, very small budget. So you can see like they don't have a lot of time. With I said they had like I think they said they had over 100 people or so on set that day. So I can only imagine how many people, and you have to factor in all the actors. They have to pay specific day rates, etc. Put up lodging, housing. It gets expensive. $8 million. It's not a lot of money. So if they really lean into that, but again, they're not playing with the producer role aspect, so it's going to be hard to prove that. But if they were, I mean, that would be probably the angle I would be pushing for.
Holding it at an angle. The evidence will show that someone asked the armorer to bring the defendant's gun to him, and she did. She brought it into the church, showed it to David Halls, who you will learn was the first assistant director. The gun was empty. Ms. Gutierrez then handed the gun to the defendant. But then you will hear that Ms. Gutierrez was given the gun back, and she took it and loaded it with dummy rounds. And what you will learn is that dummy rounds are inert rounds. They look like real rounds, but they are very easy to tell that they're not because they'll rattle. Ms. Gutierrez then went back to the church, showed the revolver to the first assistant director very fast. They only checked about 3 rounds, very quick. And they missed 1 round. You will learn that one of the rounds in that revolver was a real round. And the evidence will show that Ms. Gutierrez then handed the gun to the defendant. And what you will learn is that once again, the defendant failed to do a gun check or safety check with this armorer. So he takes the firearm, puts it in his holster. Then Ms. Hutchins and Mr.
I just want to go back because I want to make sure I understand the chain of custody with the gun.
Gutierrez then went back to the church, showed the revolver to the first assistant director very fast. They only checked.
That's the guy who got the plea deal, who took the plea deal.
About 3 rounds, very quick. And they missed 1 round. You will learn that one of the rounds in that revolver was a real round. And the evidence will show that Ms. Gutierrez then handed the gun to the defendant. And what you will learn is that once again, the defendant failed to do a gun check or a safety check with this armor. So he takes the firearm, puts it in his holster. Then Ms. Hutchins and Mr. Souza were doing this blocking. And the evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that the defendant, again, did his own thing. You will hear from an individual by the name of Kent Jorgensen. Mr. Jorgensen will tell you that he's been involved in drafting and revising movie set safety rules. You will learn that these movie set safety rules require actors, like the defendant, to treat every firearm as though it's loaded, to never point a firearm at another person, and to never put your finger on the trigger unless you're prepared to shoot or to destroy whatever's in front of you. The evidence will show that on October 21st, 2021, after that lunch break, the defendant once again violated those set safety rules. And during this blocking, the director had instructed him to just slowly take out that gun and just hold it at an angle. But you will see that the defendant takes it out quickly the first time, points it. And you will hear witness testimony who will tell you the first time he does it, his finger is on or around the trigger. He does it again, takes it out very fast, points it. And once again, you will hear testimony that his finger was on or around the trigger. And the evidence will show that that third and fatal time, he takes it out once again, fast, hammer's cocked, he cocks the hammer, points it straight at Ms. Hutchins, and fires that gun, sending that live bullet right into Ms. Hutchins' body. You will learn that this bullet was a .45 caliber round that entered Ms. Hutchins' body right underneath her right underarm. It perforated her right lung. It traveled through her spine, lacerating her spinal cord, and then it exited on the left side of her back. That bullet then went into Joel Souza's right shoulder, and it came to rest in his back, from where doctors removed it once he was transported to St. Vincent's Hospital here in Santa Fe. You will learn, ladies and gentlemen, that
Anybody know if he's going to testify, or did he testify in the Henny Gutierrez Reed trial? I'd be curious to know.
Ms. Hutchins did not have the same fate. You will see the aftermath of the shooting, and you will see medics frantically working to save Ms. Hutchins, to stabilize her, to transport her, to airlift her to UNM Hospital. But the damage from that bullet was too much. Ms. Hutchins succumbed to her injuries and bled to death. The evidence will show that meanwhile, after the shooting, the defendant began to claim he didn't pull the trigger.
Go to motionarray.com and enter a world with over...
No, we will not go to motionray.com. Stop it.
The evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that's not possible. You will hear from Mr. Pieta himself, who will tell you
Back it up.
will show the defendant began to claim he didn't pull the trigger. The evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that's not possible. You will hear from Mr. Pieta himself, who will tell you that gun will not discharge without pulling the trigger.
Before we continue on, I want to pull up that clip of Baldwin's interview with Stephanopoulos, because I don't know if that's going to come into trial. And I want to make a separate video too, going like through his original statement in the in his interrogation, because it does change. He doesn't give the same statement. First he says he fired it, then he said he didn't, he just cocked it. So I want to see if this is it. Okay, I think I got it. Then we'll get back into the opening statement.
A monitor here. The camera is here filming that way. She's guiding me through how she wants me to hold the gun for this angle. And I draw the gun out and I find a mark. I draw the gun out, I find a cut. And what's really urgent is the gun wasn't meant to be fired in that angle.
So if you're shooting directly into the camera lens, you're not aiming.
I'm not shooting into the camera lens. I'm shooting just off.
Just off.
Right, in her direction.
In her direction.
I'm holding the gun where she told me to hold it, which ended up being aimed right in below her armpit, was what I was told. I don't know. This was a complete...
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but that almost feels like victim blaming. Like it's your fault because you directed me to point the gun this way, even though it wasn't supposed to be like that, because your creative decision as the DP. Like, come on now, Baldwin. Not a good look, buddy.
Completely incidental shot, an angle that may not have ended up in the film at all. But we kept doing this. So then I said to her, now in this scene, I'm going to cock the gun. And I said, do you want to see that? And she said, yes. So I take the gun and I start to cock the gun. I'm not going to pull the trigger. I said, do you see that? She goes, well, just cheat it down and tilt it down a little bit like that. And I cock the gun. I go, can you see that? Can you see that? Can you see that? And she says, and then I let go of the hammer of the gun and the gun goes off. I let go of the hammer of the gun and the gun goes off.
At the moment, the decisive
That was the moment
moment.
the gun went off. Yeah, that was the moment the gun went off.
It wasn't in the script for the trigger to be pulled.
Well, the trigger wasn't pulled. I didn't pull the trigger.
So you never pulled the trigger.
No. I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger at them. Never. That was the training that I had. You don't point a gun at me and pull the trigger. Helena and I.
That's not just training, Baldwin. Like, I mean, I think most people are taught not to point guns or pointy, sharp objects at people. And if you're not intending on doing it, nobody thinks you intentionally did it. But when you say stuff like this, it kind of comes off of like, okay, are you victim blaming? That's kind of what it comes off to me. So that's from his interview. Now, what he said in his interrogation video doesn't seem to exactly line up with his interview. So let's go back to opening statements, though.
You will hear from firearms experts who will tell you that gun will not discharge without a pull of that trigger. The evidence will show that law enforcement officials arrived at the scene on October 21st after the shooting and immediately took this gun into their custody. Then later, they asked the FBI for assistance in processing this gun for forensics and examination. You will learn that the gun and some ammunition that was taken from the set and from PDQ arms were sent to the FBI for analysis. You will learn that the gun first went to the DNA section of the lab, where a DNA analyst found the defendant's DNA on this gun. And then the gun was transferred to the firearms and tool mark section of the lab, where a firearms examiner examined this gun very carefully and closely. Bryce Ziegler, who is the firearms examiner for the FBI, will tell you that when he received this firearm, he first examined it. He didn't see any defects, didn't see any modifications.
But what would have been an interesting or more interesting point would have been they found his DNA on the trigger. Because that's the real thing. Of course, we all know he was holding the gun. We know his DNA is on the gun, but was it on the trigger? He's saying he didn't fire the gun. And my limited experience in shooting guns, I shot a gun maybe once in my life. It doesn't go off unless you pull the trigger. So I'm not understanding. And this is where I think some of the argument is. And granted, we're in New Mexico. So the laws down there are a whole lot different than, when he's going to interview with people like George Stephanopoulos and, he's hanging out with his buddies in New York and, LA, where the gun laws are completely different. So it's not as common for people to be, carrying. So the jury pool probably has a couple of gun owners. I'm assuming that was a big question that came up during jury selection. So I'll be curious to see where this continues to go.
He tried and he checked the hammer in the 3 different positions, cocking positions. He checked the quarter cock position, fine. Checked the half cock position, fine. Checked the full cock position, fine. And when he held it in the full cock position, you will hear that hammer held until he pulled the trigger. You will also hear that Mr. Ziegler test fired this gun 12 different times. And each time that gun fired as it was designed. Each time when he pulled that trigger, it fired. And he will tell you that not once did this gun malfunction or discharge on its own. Now, the evidence will show that because the defendant had been claiming that he didn't pull the trigger, Mr. Ziegler suggested one last test to the sheriff's department. Mr. Ziegler told the sheriff's department that he could do what's called an accidental discharge test. He obtained authorization to do this test. And you will hear that he left that test for last because that test could potentially damage the gun. Mr. Ziegler went forward after he received this authorization and conducted the accidental discharge test. And you will hear, ladies and gentlemen, that during that test, a couple of the internal components of this firearm damaged. You will hear that the trigger sear.
I mean, that's not a good look for the prosecution, even though that's not their fault necessarily, because they're not the ones who are handling the gun. That's up to the people who are handling the gun, who are conducting these tests. And to my knowledge, they were hitting a hammer or something against the gun. And was that test even necessary? If, 2 out of 10, I mean, not 2 out of 10, but, the first 2 tests, you had proven, yeah, the only way you can get this gun to fire is if you pull the trigger. So is that third test really necessary? I guess because you're trying to test all kinds of things to see what could have, but we know that there were no external factors. It was just Baldwin. He was just holding the gun. He just cocked the gun. It wasn't like it was being thrown around or anything, at least to what we know. So why would that test why would it be necessary? And I know that's not the prosecution's fault, but it does poke a little bit of a hole in terms of the investigation. Just the chain of, again, chain of custody, how the evidence is being handled. So that's going to be a little bit difficult to overcome. But there was no way around it. They had to address it. Otherwise, it would have looked like, okay, well, what are you hiding?
And the full cock hammer notch were damaged during the accidental discharge testing. The evidence will show, however, that before this accidental discharge testing by the FBI, this gun functioned and worked perfectly fine. You'll see the video footage of the multiple occasions during which the defendant used this firearm on the set, and each time he fired it, it was working just fine. And in fact, you'll hear evidence that the defendant himself admitted in December of 2021 that this gun didn't have any mechanical problems. You will hear from the 2 of the country's leading experts on firearms forensics, Michael Haig and Lucian Haig. And they will tell you that they examined the revolver and the damaged pieces extensively.
Dang commercials, man.
That the damage to the full cock trigger notch is consistent with the accidental discharge testing that was conducted by the FBI. Lucian Haig will tell you that in August of 2023, he examined the trigger sear, the other piece, and that when he looked at it initially with the naked eye, there was nothing wrong with it. He couldn't see anything. But then he put it under the microscope, and he noticed some kind of rough microscopic diagonal lines on the surface of the trigger sear. And since at the time he did not know how Mr. Ziegler had conducted.
Is Baldwin sleeping now? Like that, I have to clip. I'm sorry, guys. This is going on the thumbnail. It has to. Is he literally sleeping right now? And I wonder where the jury is sitting. I can't imagine they're facing his direction. They have to be on the other side so they can't see him. Or is he deep in thought? What do you think? Is he sleeping?
Conducted the accidental discharge test, he opined that these very small microscopic lines were likely not caused by the FBI accidental discharge testing, but he could not exclude that as the source of those lines. Then a few weeks ago, Mr. Haig will tell you that he spoke with Mr. Ziegler and he learned how Mr. Ziegler had
I don't want to say your life is on the line, because realistically, you probably, even if he does get convicted, I can't see him spending that much jail time. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is with Hollywood actors, right? But it's like, dude, like, really? Definitely not a defendant like Karen Reed. That's all I'll say.
Conducted the accidental discharge test. Mr. Ziegler explained that he affixed that firearm onto a fixed platform and then struck the firearm on 6 different planes with a rubber mallet. And Mr. Ziegler explained to Mr. Haig that he had not affixed the mallet to another fixed device. Instead, he did it freehand. Mr. Haig will tell you, with his 50 plus years of experience as a firearms forensics expert, he opined or concluded that those very tiny microscopic diagonal lines on the surface of the trigger sear were likely caused by the FBI's accidental discharge test. The evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that regardless of how those tiny microscopic lines got on that trigger sear, these firearms experts will tell you that those would not affect the functionality of this firearm.
Okay.
At the end of this case, ladies and gentlemen, you are going to conclude and be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that on October 21st, 2021, that gun the defendant had asked to be assigned worked perfectly fine as it was designed, and that the fatal and one of the main problems that afternoon of October 21st was that the defendant didn't do a gun safety check with that inexperienced armorer. He pointed the gun at another human being, cocked the hammer, and pulled that trigger in reckless disregard for Ms. Hutchins' safety. And you will be convinced that the only true and just verdict in this case so that true justice can be served, is a verdict of guilty to involuntary manslaughter. Thank you.
I like it. 23 minutes. I mean, granted, we got this on 1.5 speed. I don't know if that changes the time, but I mean, that is not a lally opening. I'll tell you that. That is not. And she even dropped in the opine, and she still made it under a half hour. That's the way we like it. So, all right. So that was opening statements. You know, watching this the second time around, the first time I was kind of passively listening a little bit because I was also working my day job. But few things stuck out to me. I mean, the biggest thing for me is the handling of the gun. If they can prove, I mean, especially if they can prove his DNA was on the trigger, I feel like game over. And for me, that would be pretty damning. Or if there's some kind of video footage where we can kind of zoom in and see him actually pulling the trigger, that would also be very damning. So we'll see. I'd be curious to see what the tests are going to look like when the two experts are going to come to testify, if we can actually see if they're going to show that footage in court. But I think the only thing, I mean, aside from the producer role, I think the only other sticking point is the fact that the gun was accidentally damaged during the accidental testing. That is going to be a big hole for the defense to poke through. So let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. But now we're going to get into the defense. I mean, the defense did not come out swinging, but they did make a couple of good points towards the end of their statement where it kind of redeemed themselves. So overall, who won opening? I think prosecution probably had a little bit more of an upper hand. But again, the biggest sticking point and that is going to be the mishandling of the gun during the accidental testing. So let's listen to what the defense has to say. Oh, look, Baldwin's back awake.
What's up? May I proceed? Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. This was an unspeakable tragedy, but Alec Baldwin committed no crime. He was an actor acting, playing the role of Harlan Rust. An actor playing a character can act in ways that are lethal, that just aren't lethal on a movie set. These cardinal rules, they're not cardinal rules on a movie set. And I don't have to tell you much more about this because you've all seen gunfights in movies.
I gotta like slow this down because it's just so obscene, and I'm gonna play that back again. Because when I first heard this, I was like, are they really going with the I'm a method actor? And it wasn't me, it was the character who did it.
But Alec Baldwin committed no crime. He was an actor acting, playing the role of Harlan Rust. An actor playing a character can act in ways that are lethal, that just aren't lethal on a movie set.
Okay, but Heath Ledger was also method acting when he was playing the Joker. I mean, like, he wasn't lethal towards other people. He didn't go on a killing spree. And isn't like John Malkovich like the epitome of method acting? He's never killed anybody. Not by accident or on purpose. So like, definitely not. I mean, it's like throwing paint on the wall with this, but okay, we're here for it.
These cardinal rules, they're not cardinal rules on a movie set. And I don't have to tell you much more about this because you've all seen gunfights in movies. And
it's pretend. It's all pretend.
The reason that can happen is because safety is ensured before the actor. On this movie set, there were people responsible for ensuring the safety of the set and the firearm. Those people failed in their duties, but Alec Baldwin committed no crime. The most critical issue in this case is how a real bullet got on a movie set. The evidence will show that real bullets are never supposed to be on movie sets. Movie sets use dummies and blanks. Movie sets use dummies, fake inert bullets that look like real bullets, they don't go bang, for when you want a close-up of the gun. You can't tell them apart from live bullets by looking at them, which is why live bullets can be nowhere near a movie set. And if the director wants a shot of the gun going, bang, poof, there's blanks that they can use. And those blanks look nothing like real bullets. And they are used for those shooting scenes. And, they'll play these videos that they described of Alex, firearm in the movie going bang, poof, and people are conditioned to seeing people firing weapons and thinking that's a dangerous act. That's a dangerous act. And they will play those videos and give you that image to try to tarnish them in your eyes. But that's not what happened here. On this set, there was a real bullet, something that should never be on a movie set, something which has nothing to do with making a movie.
Agree.
And you will hear no evidence, not one word, that Alec Baldwin had anything to do with that real bullet being brought onto that set. The second critical issue in this case is, why did a real bullet get loaded into a prop movie gun? It is undisputed that the bullet was loaded into the gun by the armorer, the person on set whose responsibility it was to ensure the gun was safe. And so picture that moment of the armorer placing a live bullet into that firearm. You hear the prosecutor say, he did this, or he performed in a certain way. He picked out the biggest gun as his prop. It's to tarnish him in your eyes. You will hear no evidence whatsoever. No evidence.
Why zoom in on Hilaria at that specific moment? Because she's like, I know my husband. He's the big gun kind of guy. Yikes. But I think it does. Is it relevant? No, not necessarily, like the size of the gun, but it kind of goes to show his personality. I'm Alec Baldwin. I gotta have the big. I have to have the best. It's for the character. I swear. So I think it kind of does show his personality and a little bit of his arrogance.
That anything Mr. Baldwin did, that something he did in that moment, that horrible moment when she put that bullet in that gun, none of it had anything to do with Alec Baldwin. And finally, the first assistant director's job, the head of safety, Dave Halls, checks it before it goes to the actor. And he will tell you he made a tragic mistake. You failed to detect a live bullet. And Alec Baldwin had nothing to do with that either. So all this evidence that the prosecutor just outlined, all of it, has nothing to do with these critical issues. Nothing. Which leads us to this. The evidence will show that on a movie set, safety has to occur before the gun is placed in the actor's hands. In this case, this unique case on a movie set, the prop gun was placed in Mr. Baldwin's hands and cold gun was announced, meaning it had been checked and double-checked by those responsible to ensure the gun was safe. It was just a prop. They all thought it was just a prop and could do no harm. The actor's job is to act, to rehearse, to choreograph his moves, to memorize his lines. He's Harlan Rust. He's an outlaw running for his life, who in the incident in question, he's pulling a six-shooter to try to defend himself. That's why the gun has
look at Baldwin in this moment. I remember watching this earlier today, and I'm like, damn, he's like, damn, this is such a great movie. This is such a great movie. This was the role of a lifetime for me. Yeah, he is an outlaw. Yeah, Dana, I'm the same. Me and Harlan, we're 1-1, man. Ugh.
To be safe before it gets into the actor's hands. His mind is somewhere else,
Stephen
in the being of
Baldwin
another, a century away, an outlaw. He must be able to take that weapon and use it as the person he's acting would, to wave it, to point it, to pull the trigger like actors do, in ways that would be lethal in the real world, but are not lethal on a movie set. And I'm going to show you that scene now before lunch. And if we could just play action.
If you could just play action. This isn't a movie. Right now, this isn't a movie. That was a movie. But that was a movie set. That wasn't in the film. If that were the case, Helena Hutchins would still be alive. A real human being was murdered. She was killed. I don't want to say murder, but she was killed. She was killed. Play action? The level of awareness. Sir, can we be just a little less Hollywood here? And now they're going to show this frickin' trailer for this this dumb movie.
I'm gonna go find some help.
I don't need no damn help.
You're gonna die if I don't.
He's wounded on the run. To play again? Continue.
Now he's narrating it.
All the rest. Need you stand up nice and slow, toss any weapons you have.
He's on the church pew, bleeding, his hand gripping the revolver. He would defend himself against the men in the movie. But
One more. You good? Ready?
Arlen Rust. Did you get up nice and slow, tossing the weapons you have?
Well, I'll get right there.
So you want me to wait to give you that line till he lands, till camera lands?
Yep.
7 minutes, draw your gun and look up. Move your gun, okay?
Okay, which way? Camera right or left? So camera left for now.
I'll stand right here for you, Alex.
So whip it out. Okay, let me get this on waist. Ready? Okay, ready? Okay, ready? Ready.
And set. Ready, and action.
Arlen Rust.
One more just like that. You got one more? Yeah.
Ready, ready?
they want him to do it again. There's no danger. They want him to do it again.
And set. Ready.
He's literally like at first I'm like, is this part of the movie? Like, is this like a narrated voiceover that's part of the movie, or is this his lawyer right now narrating exactly what's going on? This was so bizarre. And what is the point? What is the point of you showing this? Like, oh, he's an act. We get it. We all know Alec Baldwin's an actor. We know he's an actor. We don't need to see his like biggest performance to date. Like, geez. Like, I guess they're trying to show like, oh, I mean, the only point I guess I could see with them playing this clip is just to show that he's an actor who's taking direction. He's asking for cues from the director. He's asking for cues, so he's not wearing that producer hat role. But again, that's not anything that's coming in anyways. So we already know he's an actor. We know that's his role. The producer stuff's not coming in. You don't need to argue that. So what was the point? Like, look, he's pulling out this gun and he didn't injure anybody this time, but he did the next time. So what does this exactly prove?
And cash.
Arlen Rust. Nice.
Finding a way to combine all my skills was always a little overwhelming.
Yikes with the commercials. Sorry about that, guys.
Similar to scenes we've all seen in movies and television. It's a scene similar to scenes we've all seen in movies and television, performed by thousands of actors. And the scene that continues after lunch is the same scene. It's just not, unfortunately, captured on videotape. And the scene they envision.
I love the reaction from, ironically, the prosecutor's name is Morrissey, Carrie Morrissey. Go figure. God, I'm so sorry that you were cursed with that same last name from the other Morrissey, but now you're fighting on the right side of justice this time.
And acted out, that prop gun was positioned in the afternoon so close to the camera that you could see inside, that you could feel it. You could feel that it was loaded, and it was loaded, of course, with dummies to make it look like a real gun. But this one time, one of those dummies was a real bullet.
And that he didn't even cock it though.
To anyone in that church.
But that's the thing. He didn't cock it in that shot. So what is that proving? He just whipped it out. If you showed a clip of him cocking the gun and nothing coming out, dropping the hammer, nothing coming out, okay, then that makes a little bit more sense. It's more relevant. But I don't understand him whipping the gun out. That's not the same as cocking the gun.
Amongst the actors, directors, and crew in the scene, everyone was doing exactly how they go about their business every day on a movie, not as if some lethal element had been included in the environment. You will see creativity and movement and everyone talking and vibrant. No one had any idea that this venomous, toxic element had been inserted into this magic they were creating. But it did. It entered that place. It killed an amazing person. It wounded another, and it changed lives forever. And so to find out what happened on that movie set, you need to do something that the prosecutors could never do. You have to step back and remember what they were doing on a movie set. What were Helena Hutchins, the cinematographer, Joel Souza, the director, and Alec Baldwin, the actor, doing on Bonanza Creek Ranch? You know, movies and magic have always been closely associated. The first people that made movies were magicians. And this imagination that happens in movies, King Kong, he can stand above a city, and Superman can fly, horses and snakes and gun battles. For this to all work, for cinematography, what Helena did to work, for acting to work, you have to be so close to the barrier of real and imagined that the viewer feels that they're there, that it's real. The viewer can't see strings from the stuntman. The stuntman must leap. The snake must hiss. And guns happen in movies all over this country for many decades. Bang, bang. You've all seen it. Guns have been an element.
Bang, bang. Who does that remind you of, guys? God, did Colin Albert write your freaking opening statement, dude? Dang.
To theater and film and television since the earliest of times. Depictions of war and combat, Spartacus, it stirs audiences because it feels real. Later films, Platoon, Apocalypse Now, they showed the unvarnished realities of war. This ranch in Santa Fe, it had been the scene to many gunfights and movie scenes, well before Alec was even born. Laramie, Butch and the Sundance Kid, and these Westerns.
There's a couple of times throughout his opening statement where the prosecution does argue, because, and I mean, rightfully so, because nobody's arguing whether or not Alec, like, was the one who ultimately fired the gun, or whatever side you believe, but he was the one who ultimately caused her death. Like, nobody's arguing that, and nobody's necessarily saying he did it on purpose. I think we can all agree, like, it was an accident. But that being said, it's more about the mishandling of the weapon. So they're gonna go side by.
The evidence will show that guns are in movies because movies are about people's lives and guns are in people's lives. So let's talk about the evidence and how the lethal bullet got there. How did this happen and how did it unfold? The evidence will be the following. Everybody on a movie set has a role. The armorer armors, the director directs, the actor acts. They work in harmony, but they have a division of responsibility. Safety, being important, has the first assistant director, whose name is Dave Halls, above the armorer and sort of the safety of the set. And on that day in question, the cast and the creative directors and crew in the church, it's a fake church. Their actors are not in their normal clothes, it's costumes. There's debris falling from the ceiling, it's fake debris. And they yell out cold gun. And that is an important term you're going to learn in this case. It means that the gun is cold. No one need worry. But even that requires a little bit more explanation. Cold gun doesn't mean no live bullets. There are for sure 100% no live bullets on movie sets. That's unimaginable. Cold means you don't even have the fake blank poof in it. You don't need to worry even about eye gear or earplugs for that fake bang. It means it's empty, inert, cosmetic, can do no harm. Cold guns can't hurt people. It's impossible, literally impossible for a cold gun to hurt somebody. You could hurt you more by dropping it on your foot. And that's why these artists are carrying on in their art. Cold gun, all clear to go. And the armorer on the set hands a prop gun to Alec, like she had done times before, like people have done with him in movies for a generation. And he's there. He's in the movie set church with his movie set gear and his holster, and he takes his movie set gun. And he's deeply focused in that moment on his character. The artists, the crew members, they're moving around him. Again, no eye gear or earplugs, nothing to protect against. They carry on. They practice. They rehearse. They take a lunch break. Some folks leave, some don't. They continue the scene. Dave Halls, the head of safety, is actually practicing the movement so they can frame. They can frame the footage that will happen after lunch. And the prop cold gun comes back. The prop cold gun comes back. Cold gun. I call it again. Same gun, again, safe. The first assistant director, Dave Halls, head of safety for the entire film, a man with decades of experience, comes and takes the additional step and inspects the gun. Verifies again. Cold gun. Everyone relax. Go back to focus on the making of a movie. There's nothing in the gun that can hurt anybody. And Alex sits on that pew. And the creative directors, the crew, they're moving around him, in front of him. And Harlan Rust, he begins, like the prosecutor told you, rehearsing, acting. This is a completely mundane, uneventful, routine act on a movie set. And so everybody carries on. Nobody fathomed, imagined, foresaw any possible danger. They moved around Alec as he practiced his draw. As the prosecutor put it, working out the details of the move and the actor. He does it again, does it in a different way. Nobody bats an eye. And they will tell you that the investigation revealed that Baldwin was practicing drawing and pointing the weapon of the scene with guidance and instruction from Helena Hutchins and Joel Souza. The gun goes off. Everybody's shocked. Alec is startled. He immediately says, I didn't mean to shoot. I didn't pull the trigger. Immediately. What the hell just happened? They collectively explain. Shock turns to panic. 911 is called.
Out at Bonanza Creek Ranch right now. We've had 2 people shot on a movie set accidentally. He said someone was shot. 2 people accidentally with gunshot at on movie set Bonanza Creek Ranch. Send it. I'll connect you with medical dispatch on that. Santa Fe Fire and EMS.
Sorry, I'm gonna actually bring this back down to normal so we can hear. I had trouble hearing the 911 call, But there is something distinct that comes out of this 911 call.
Movie set accidentally. He said someone was shot. 2 people accidentally with gunshots as on movie set, Bonanza Creek Ranch. Send it. I'll connect you with medical dispatcher. Don't hang up. Santa Fe Fire and EMS, what's the location of the emergency? Bonanza Creek Ranch has had 2 people accidentally shot on a movie set by a prop gun. We need help immediately. Okay. This fucking AG that yelled at me at lunch because asking about revisions. This motherfucker. Did you see him lean over my table and yell at me? He's got protected guns. He's responsible for what happened in the now, Mimi? No. I'm a strip supervisor. How many people are injured? 2 that I know of. I was sitting, we were rehearsing, and it went off, and I ran out.
Accidentally shot on a movie set with a prop gun. The fucking AD, it was his responsibility. Not a word.
I mean, is that what she said, that it was his responsibility?
This fucking AG that yelled at me at lunch because asking about revisions. This motherfucker. Did you see him lean over my table and yell at me? He's got protected guns. He's responsible for what happened in the now, Mimi? No,
I guess he did.
How many people are injured?
Oh, she did.
2 that I know of. I was sitting, we were rehearsing, and it went off, and I ran out.
Accidentally shot on a movie set with a prop gun. The fucking AD, it was his responsibility. Not a word about Alec Baldwin. While they're en route, police, EMS, the cast and crew are outside, trying to figure out what happened, frantic, talking to those responsible for the prop and its safety. The armorer is yelling, sorry. Hall's the first assistant director is panicked. The prop master, Sarah Zachary, I don't know exactly where she is at that point, but they check the gun feverishly. They take the ammo out of the gun. They look at it. What the heck happened? They go back to the prop cart that houses the ammo. They're touching the gun and manipulating the gun, emptying it. They go and move some stuff off the prop cart, trying to figure it out. Sarah Zachary, the head of props, will tell you she threw some stuff out. And eventually, of course, EMS and police arrive pretty soon thereafter. And Helena Hutchins and Joel Souza, the director, are transported to the hospital where Helena tragically passes away. And I'm not going to be asking questions about her condition after she was wounded or the medical interventions that followed. Her injuries, the efforts to revive her, are not in dispute in this case. The evidence will be there. The prosecutor may present some of these emotionally charged images, but we're not going to be asking questions about that, and it's not an issue of dispute in this case. And you jurors are allowed to ask yourselves whether or not that should be the focus or the focus should be the evidence. So police enter the scene. They have lapel cameras. Thank God they have lapel cameras. You want to see what happens? The evidence will show you can play the videotape. Want to see if they take the right gun? Play the videotape. Want to make sure what the people said or did they're remembering correctly? Play the videotape. And so they immediately recover the prop gun and they secure it. That's off to the side. And the reason that you preserve things in the moment is so that you know what existed in the moment, the evidence in the moment, the people and the witnesses and what they said in the moment. These folks, the members of Rust, they'd never been through anything like this before. That is why what they originally said matters so much in this case. If you remember anything I say today as the evidence proceeds, remember that. Look at the evidence of what the people of Rust said and did that day. Life changes, memories change. There are human motivations, internal pressure, external pressure. That's why preservation is so important. So the police continue.
It's a really good point. And that's what I was saying too earlier, is that the prosecution definitely, I feel like, had a slightly better opening statement, especially with the way that they started. It was very gripping, especially if you're speaking to gun owners, which I imagine there has to be a handful, or even maybe potentially ex-law enforcement. Who knows? Who knows? We don't know who is making up the jury pool, but that is a really good point of, you know, memory does change over time, and thankfully there is video footage that we can go back to. But the biggest thing is going to be, I think the biggest sticking point for the defense's case is going to be Alec Baldwin himself, the way he behaves, hearing potentially some of the witness testimony as well too. And it seems like if they can convince enough jurors to say, yeah, under a unanimous vote of, yeah, it was the first AD's fault. It was the armorer, and it was the first AD. The first AD already took his plea deal. Ms. Gutierrez Reed is already serving her sentence. But I mean, memories changed. Stories change. You get media. I mean, obviously this has been widely covered. There's media pressure. It's, you know, involving Hollywood. So there's always like that extra drama to it that's been added. So it's a good point.
Continue. In terms of the prop cart and the prop ammo that's on the cart, it's manipulated, altered, kind of messy. And at this accidental shooting on a movie set, the police begin to make some mistakes. No one had ever investigated a prop gun on a movie set before. They recover the prop gun, but they don't wear gloves. They don't have the prop cart inside the crime scene. Someone moves it onto the crime scene. People start touching it and showing, okay, this is a dummy, this is a blank. And then they make another mistake that matters in this case with some more significance, which is that they don't secure the prop truck that houses the cart. See, that cart that they roll off comes from a truck where all of the ammunition, all of the firearms are, and that's where they're stored. They don't secure the prop truck for several days. And then the prop house that supplies the truck, that supplies the cart, they don't secure for over a month. A lot of mistakes. They had never investigated it in case of the movie set. But
so this is a great example just coming off of the Reed case, is because in that, it was clear all of the little inconsistencies were done intentionally, whereas here it just seems more of incompetence and the scene was very chaotic. There were a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of people handling different things, mishandling different things as well too. Later, the first witness they call was the first responding officer on the scene. He seemed like he was pretty great, and he only had like 2 years experience working with that specific department, and then another 2 years, I think, working at the sheriff's department. So there's a lot of holes. The shoddy investigation, even if it's not the prosecution's fault, it makes it difficult. It makes it extremely difficult. So that's why I might lean one way, but in terms of just looking at it objectively, are they going to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt? Are there enough holes that the defense is going to be able to poke? Or is this going to go to a straight mistrial? I have no idea.
they had the prop gun. That was key. And so they needed to figure out where the live bullet came from. They had the shell casing. Starline brass. That's the sort of make. You'll hear that phrase, starline brass. And the police were right to focus on that. That was the lethal element. And so they work outward. Makes good enough sense. Folks around the ammo and the gun to be interviewed at the precinct. The armorer at the precinct, she loaded the live bullet. Hall's head of safety, he double checked. And Alec walks up to the police. You'll see this early today. And he says, I'm here, whatever you want to do, whatever you need me to do. Just tell me where to go. And Sarah Zachary, the prop master who threw out the stuff at the cart, they missed her that night to bring to the precinct. But the rest of them at the precinct.
And another thing you'll see too, maybe we'll cover this in the next video, is because of the first responding officer, and again, it's probably lack of resources, etc., lack of experience, just incompetence. They didn't do a good job of separating their witnesses either. So, but again, it wasn't done intentionally. This was, I think, just lack of experience, or even lack of experience specifically when dealing with, actors and Hollywood celebrities, and also with film crews and going to a crime scene where there's literally hundreds of witnesses. That I can't imagine, pulling up to a scene like that, being only 2 years on the job and being like, oh crap, like it's go time. And I have 2 victims, not just 1, 2. And I have this Hollywood actor and I have hundreds of people running around, it's crazy. So he brings up, this is where he kind of like brings it all together a little bit. And it would have been stronger if he just dug into this instead of doing all the, he's a method actor, he's Harlan Rust, and showing us the movie trailer, which is just bizarre.
And thankfully, we have the lapel cameras.
And then they cleared the gun outside after at his request, and I witnessed it clear and saw the bullets.
Also, his intros into these videos are not really that smooth, and I have to say they were a lot smoother, going from showing different exhibits, even in opening, way better. But this guy, he's just yeah, okay, let's just play this random clip, and it's a little jarring.
Okay. So
this is the first day.
I can pause this. I can turn this off. Move on. That was just a quick snapshot of the scene.
Let's approach each other. This is Ms. Johnson.
They consented to be good.
A lot of sidebar. So this is the second one. I think there's one more.
They're interviewed with lapel cameras. They're interviewed by the lead detective, Detective Pinot. And those witnesses, some of them will come in here and testify. And not a single one of them will tell you anything different than what I'm about to tell you about the evidence. The gun was double checked, verified it was a cold gun, not an actor's responsibility to check. Safety was ensured before. Alec was doing his practicing, his rehearsing, his movements. People manipulate and point guns on movie sets. The gun went off during the rehearsal. No one saw him intentionally pull the trigger. It was obviously a tragic accident, but Alec committed no homicide. Alec took the gun from those charged with its safety. He did not tamper with it. He did not load it himself. He did not leave it unattended. It completed his costume and his character. It was an actor handling a prop and integrating it into the character of Harlan Rust. There was a dedicated professional there, off camera, whose sole sacred responsibility was that prop safety. And Dave Halls, the head of safety, was there by her side. Everyone relied on that. And it was tragic.
But I also thought too that Mr. Jorgensen was the one who's going to testify to the SAG guidelines of like set safety. So I was a little confused on that.
That they let them down. He was just acting as he has done for generations, and it was the safety apparatus that failed them all. So law enforcement continues. They need to find the live bullet. That was the lethal element. So they, led by Detective Cannell, execute a search warrant on the church. And that's what law enforcement does. They immediately go to a judge. They say, this is what we need to do. They go into the church urgently before anything can be altered. They're confirming it was an accident, not a crime in the church. They search for guns and ammunition, videos and photos. There was no further answer in the church. They had the prop gun. They had all those witnesses secured. Their statements are clear. Alec had committed.
Yeah, I mean, too, like also just like thinking back and like needing a refresher, but my limited time working on small film sets, the first AD is pretty much like the director's bitch, essentially. Like he's the guy who's going to call rolling and, you know, figure out, he's the guy who's running around with the clipboard, with the headset, getting underpaid, etc. So like head of safety. But I don't know, maybe people are doubling up on roles here because I mean the budget was $8 million. And also too, with such a small budget, like what level of experience do some of these people have? You're cutting corners wherever possible. So again, that's why it's such a shame that the producer role wasn't allowed in this, because that would have just helped the prosecution's case so much.
They did no crime, but the bullet was a mystery. And so they focus on the bullet, the critical lethal bullet, and how did it enter the movie set? So they had the prop cart, and then they go do the warrant on the prop truck. And so at that point, and I'm going to put up a photo so that you can see who some of these individuals are. They're trying to figure out when they go to the truck, what is the source of the lethal bullet? And so they execute a warrant on the truck approximately a week later. The Seth Kenny that you heard about in the prosecutor's opening, the supplier for the set, he's there. Sarah Zachary, the prop master, she's there. And they walk through what's inside of the prop truck with law enforcement. But there's no answer to the lethal bullet. And you know, this case then takes on, you know, all this pressure. You know, the media begins swirling. Where is the lethal bullet? How did it get on that movie set? And what about that actor, Alec Baldwin, who had nothing to do with why the bullet got on the movie set? And so police and prosecutors, they work hand in hand, meeting after meeting, trying to find the lethal bullet, meeting with Seth Kenny, meeting with Sarah Zachary, the prop master, the supplier. Where is it? And about a month after the incident, Sarah Zachary finally sits down with law enforcement to answer some questions. And she explains to them that she threw away some stuff. She disposed of some stuff. And the prosecutors and police keep meeting, swirling media. And then at that point, they go to the last step, right? Done the cart, gone to the truck, met with Sarah Zachary, and they go execute a search warrant on, as the prosecutor told you, PDQ, the prop house. And again, Seth Kenny's there to greet them, let them in, and they don't find the lethal bullet. They never did. They never did. And as things roll into police and prosecutors, cell phones and photos and forensics, looking for this shiny object, they found another shiny object. Instead of trying to find the source of the lethal bullet, they focused on Mr. Baldwin. But Mr. Baldwin was like every other actor. He goes bang bang in movies. He's told when guns are cold or not. He rehearses and acts as his character. Safety proceeds before the actor. Once the actor has the prop gun, he can handle it however.
You had it. Because, like, I mean, that is bad. Like, that's a bad look. Especially with, like, Sarah Zachary being like, oh, yeah, like, by the way, I did throw out some stuff. Like, why didn't you come forward with that sooner? Why didn't you tell investigators that weeks ago instead of just now? You could have easily, like, you were doing it that day. And granted, like, somebody else probably had seen you also throwing stuff away too. So I mean, I get it. It's a chaotic scene. I don't know what it's like to be in that kind of situation, but that's not a good look for the prosecution. But now he's going back to this whole, he's an actor, and it's just like, you're losing me. You're losing me, guy.
The person he's acting as would. A properly cleared gun can't hurt anybody. And so they told you about some of the things that Alex said in the statements that they will take or pick out a few lines from. But he won't tell you anything different, that he took a gun loaded and cleared by the armor in the A-Day. He made motions with the gun as he was rehearsing. He didn't intentionally pull the trigger. The gun just went off. And he does say, I didn't.
So now he didn't intentionally pull the trigger. Instead of so he could have accidentally pulled the trigger. Was that a Freudian slip?
Have a problem with the gun before. And this idea, that they said that he didn't want to check because he would offend them. In this moment, he's been doing this for 40 years, the evidence will show. And he has habits. And there are also SAG guidelines that tell actors what to do and what not to do. And the SAG guidelines don't tell actors to check the gun. You will see them. That's not the actor's role. And so I guess the point that they're trying to make is that why in this specific moment, he doesn't break his habit of 40 years and check it differently and sort of insult them this one time. If he had done that and started playing with the gun in that way, they'd be saying, arrogant actor, why is he doing that? So they will play these statements, Alec's statements. You're going to hear a man in shock and grief, a father, an artist, worried about his family. You hear he's, on one of the calls, he's going to meet with the decedent's family, the Hutchins family, and he's upset about that. He will talk to law enforcement. He will call them. He doesn't need a lawyer. He didn't commit a crime. He will call them and offer to meet and speak over and over again. And ask anyone in the acting world. Actors know. Actors rely on armorers and point guns and shoot guns. The Armorers Act, what they did is clear and proven. The head of safety, you will learn, took responsibility for his verification failure. But Alec committed no homicide. So law enforcement didn't have a homicide case against Alec Baldwin. But they changed the question. You heard the prosecutor tell you about this. Did he pull the trigger?
I'm sorry, I just had to pull up this clip because I remember this. Like back in the day with like VH1, or like MTV, like throwbacks of like celebrities, like worst moments with like that David Hasselhoff, like cheeseburger, hamburger thing. Remember this call with Alec Baldwin to his daughter?
Hey, I want to tell you something, okay? And I want to leave a message for you right now. Because again, it's 10:30 here in New York on a Wednesday. And once again, I made an ass of myself trying to get to a phone to call you at a specific time. When the time comes for me to make the phone call, I stop whatever I'm doing and I go and I make that phone call at 11 o'clock in the morning in New York, and if you don't pick up the phone, at 10 o'clock at night, and you don't even have that goddamn phone turned on. I want you to know something, okay? I'm tired of playing this game with you. I'm leaving this message with you to tell you, you have insulted me for the last time. You have insulted me. You don't have the brains or the decency as a human being. I don't give a damn that you're 12 years old or 11 years old, or that you're a child, or that your mother is a thoughtless pain in the ass who doesn't care about what you do as far as I'm concerned. You have humiliated me for the last time with this phone. And when I come out there next week, I'm going to fly out there for the day just to straighten you out on this issue.
Concerned father, like he's a father. Oh God, I hope he does for the sake of this, for the sake of the prosecution. I hope he does take the stand because they will destroy him.
Did he pull the trigger? Did he intentionally pull the trigger? And if he did, of course, that would only make his statement incorrect, right? That would mean he would have misspoken, incorrect. And I want to stop for a moment and just tell you, because you're going to hear a lot of testimony, expert testimony that the prosecutor told you about the gun functioning imperfectly. Did he let the hammer down when he cocked it? Did he hit the trigger? Did he, in a calculated manner, as the prosecutor made a motion, fire the gun like that? And when this issue is discussed, it's easy to sort of pull yourself into courtroom land and away from a movie set. On a movie set, you're allowed to pull the trigger. So even if he intentionally pulled the trigger like the prosecutor just demonstrated, that doesn't make him guilty of homicide. He did not know or have any reason to know that gun was loaded with a live bullet. That's the key. That live bullet is the key. That is the lethal element. But again, as the prosecutor told you, if they could prove that he intentionally pulled the trigger and he was imperfect, imprecise, wrong with what he said, then maybe you take that and you say he's lying. And if he's a liar, he committed homicide. And so what they do is they take the prop gun. They're blinded by the shot. They're blinded by trying to disprove Alec. They take it and they order a destructive test on the firearm. They order the FBI to take a test that they know will destroy the firearm. It's a pointless, unnecessary test where they blindly try to make this big case by taking a mallet and smashing the firearm.
Yeah, that's bad.
At the time that they did that, they knew that Alec had adamantly maintained that he was manipulating the hammer and the gun just went off. That the witnesses said it went off out of nowhere. That there are these accidental discharges that happen on the set. That guns have issues in the real world. That this gun had a hair trigger. And the owner's manual of this specific gun actually says that if you load it with a live round or any round in the chamber, in that last position, and you drop it like you see a cowboy in a movie, this type of old cowboy gun can accidentally go off. I don't remember hearing anything about that. The evidence will show that. So rather than trying to answer the question of what happened, they proceed with the destructive test. They eliminate the one item, that could prove what Alec said and believed. They didn't offer him a chance to test the gun. They didn't take the gun apart before they broke it and destroyed it and look at its inner workings. They didn't turn on the videotape. They just destroyed it. Can't ever be tested in the same condition it was in that day. Won't ever allow Alec to show his truth. And the destruction of this gun that you will hear in this evidence is symbolic of this entire case. Because the officers will tell you at that point, they weren't really investigating anymore. They were trying to disprove Alec, to get Alec to have this day. And so
the prosecution or the investigators?
Case. Because the officers will tell you at that point, they weren't really investigating anymore. They were trying to disprove Alec, to get Alec to have this day. And so after
the investigators, I don't really think so. I don't think they were like, let's stick it to like Alec Baldwin, like F this guy, like I'm sorry. Like again, you made like he made great points. Like, yes, the FBI destroying the gun, great point. The fact that they threw out Sarah what I was gonna say Sarah Levinson, excuse me. Sarah Zachary, she throwing stuff away. Great points. Dave Halls being first AD, not head of safety, but first aid, well, maybe head of safety as well too. Maybe people were doubling up on roles, but Dave Halls also was supposed to check the gun for a live round. So all good points. If you led with that, if that was your whole case, like, yes, okay, cool, but you're losing me here, dude. You're definitely losing me here when you get with this flowery language, and then you start accusing I think it was incompetence. I think it was just the fact that they didn't know maybe how to handle an investigation with this amount of witnesses or with a Hollywood actor. I mean, that's what I don't think they were intentionally gunning for Baldwin.
destruction of the firearm, they hired some expert witnesses you heard about to pick up the pieces, so to speak. And the state retained Lucian Haig, an expert with over half a century of experience. And he will come into court and he will tell you he's never seen anything like this in his entire career. They conducted a pointless test, a test that would lead to inevitable destruction of the firearm. There were other correct tests that they could have done to prove whether or not it could have accidentally discharged. None of the experts can test the gun in the condition it was in on the day in question. Why? Not because of something that Alec Baldwin or the crew members of Rust did. They were all clear. The gun just went off. But because of something that law enforcement did, and they deprived him of that opportunity. However, Lucian Haig will tell you that in his analysis, he did find modification that he thought likely pre-existed the FBI testing. And what that modification means and how it impacted the gun is hard to perfectly know, of course, but it was a modification on an important part, the critical part of the firearm. And it was important enough for them to put into a report and to write a new opinion about. They felt this revelation had to be sent to prosecutors, and they maintained that position, that this modification was a matter of import for almost a year. And then a few weeks ago before trial, they just took it back. They just took it back. You will get to see the circumstances of that take back. How far they would go for the shiny object. They never solved the question of the lethal bullet. They destroyed the gun, and all they were left with is Alec Baldwin and the movie they intend to put on. But because they never solved the lethal bullet, they eliminated the prop gun. There will not be one witness, not one shred of evidence in this trial that Alec knew or should have known the gun was loaded with a live round. So they can't prove their high-profile homicide. So they will proceed to then here and now tell you about other things, other evidence that you will hear that has nothing to do with what happened in the church on October 21st. That the movie said as a whole was improper or anything, that they hired the wrong armorer. I think I heard in opening. The evidence will show that the armorer was hired by somebody else, trained by somebody else, had done gun scenes on Rust with somebody else before Alec even got there. She was the daughter and the apprentice of the most famous and well-respected armorer in Hollywood. And she had just left serving, being an armorer for Nicolas Cage on another Western. Then they'll come in and they'll say, but what about the movie guidelines? You heard about Mr. Jorgensen, the movie guidelines, that one of the protocols wasn't followed, or there was a set safety issue about something unrelated to this. Like these movie guidelines on a set or the things of Navy SEALs and NASA. The guidelines were followed. They followed the safety guidelines. Actors don't check the weapons. Safety is ensured by dedicated personnel. So they will say, but there have been accidental discharges on the set, that guns had fired accidentally prior, not related to Alec, by the way. But again, that's the people we looked at. Anna Gutierrez-Reed's fault, Sarah Zachary's fault, perhaps, Dave Hall's faults, workplace issues. Some of them will end up, and you will hear the witnesses in this case, many of them have brought civil lawsuits. And you'll hear that, in those civil lawsuits, they're presenting evidence to try to meet a burden, not a criminal beyond a reasonable doubt homicide trial burden, but they're going to try to prove their cases in civil courts. And that's where faults and accidents are at worst 99% worked out. Not here. But you'll hear these members of the Rust crew come in here. They'll try to make sense of this for you. Some of them have sued. Some of them are in grief. Some of them are in grief and have sued. And part of this grief they feel, that everybody feels, is understandable. And what they will do is they will tell you, if only we had had a second armorer. One of them will say, if only Dave Halls had checked better. If only the camera hadn't been right there and Ms. Hutchins wasn't leaning over the camera If only I myself did this. If only Alec did that. This is natural, their testimony. It's part of the human condition. It's part of grief.
Objection, Your Honor.
None of them knew.
Yes.
Was the judge sleeping this time? Yeah, so this is the third objection. But again, like going back to that George Stephanopoulos interview that we watched earlier, it did kind of feel like he was victim blaming a little bit Baldwin. So I wonder if that's going to come in.
Their grief will look for reasons.
There we go.
As I was saying, the witnesses in their grief will look for reasons to try to make sense of this tragedy. But again, none of them knew or should have known about the lethal bullet either. No one had any idea that it was on that set or in that gun. In that world, they were all in it together. And you will hear that none of this other stuff has anything to do with those two critical questions we started with. Why there was a live bullet on set, why the armor replaced it in the gun, and of course, why the head of safety failed to detect it. None of it speaks to whether Alec knew or should have known those things. He didn't. No one on that set did. It was not foreseeable. You will hear that word from the witnesses and from eventually the instructions. Foreseeable. This was anything other than foreseeable. And they must prove beyond any and all reasonable doubt that this was foreseeable. Total indifference to human life and that death might occur. He's an actor. He's an actor. But here we are at a homicide trial.
Are
so
you?
They will pull witnesses, and witnesses will be cross-examined. They will push themselves to the edge of
Wait, I have to ask this question. Wait, so is this a movie? Or are you just an actor playing a lawyer? And Baldwin is an actor playing a defendant in a trial about a murder that happened on a movie set? Oh my God, is this a movie within a movie? Oh my, now it makes sense.
truth and beyond. You know, these things about Alec didn't notice this or Alec didn't notice that. I want to make sure that you're clear on something that the evidence will show. He had been filming on that set for a handful of days. The evidence will show he had just gotten there. It's not as if he had been there for months and months and noticed things and failed things, and he just gotten there. You don't notice every little thing when you start at a new place and when you're in the character of Harlan Rust. But they will push forward and they will have gaps in the evidence as well. Don't expect you to be hearing and for them to call the first AD head of safety. I don't know if you'll be hearing from the lead detective, Canton, who investigated this case, the lead detective, or the sergeant that supervised it, Sergeant Zook. I don't think you'll hear from Mr. Schilling, who was the lead investigator for the prosecutors. And so as you hear this, you jurors can assess about that gap of evidence. And there's one thing that I can tell you will not hear also. You will not hear from an actor or an expert in acting. And so they will play the videotapes of Alec Baldwin, the actor, acting. They will show you perhaps over and over again him in shooting scenes. Bad Alec shooting a gun the wrong way in a movie scene. They will try to get you to picture that and forget that this was a movie set in the first place. And you will see actors in a Western acting. And your mind might go to your favorite gun scene in your favorite movie. You may picture actors and actresses doing exactly what you see here. The other actors in Rust doing the same thing that Mr. Baldwin was doing. But when you come back from that moment, remember, this is a homicide trial. And you will see soon that the reason they play those videos of him over and over is because they don't have any evidence of actual homicide. And you will learn the truth. Not a day goes by when we don't wish Alec had saved your life. But never, the witnesses will tell you, in the history, is something that an actor has done. Intercepted a live bullet from a prop gun. No actor in history. No one could have imagined or expected an actor to do that. So just remember that truth. So when they cry out justice, justice is truth. This was an unspeakable tragedy. Alec Baldwin committed no crime. Thank you.
And there you have it. Those are opening statements. What did you guys think? I mean, again, I think the defense's whole, he's an actor playing a character. Things are different on movie sets. Well, no, there are guidelines. And it's going to be a battle of the experts. I really believe that. Kind of like the Karen Reed case. It's kind of weird how in a way they almost mirror each other, but like for two completely different reasons. And in this case, it's not the investigators trying to cover up something. It's not the investigators, attempting to pull one over our face or us trying to figure out what actually happened. We know what happened. It's undisputed. But whether or not Alec Baldwin is responsible, it will be up to the finders of fact, the jury. So let me know what you guys think in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked today's video, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you never miss another video from me. And make sure you hit that like button too. If you want to show your support, that's the best way you can honestly do it, aside from making a donation to this channel, because it shows the YouTube algorithm that this stuff is newsworthy. And I think it's really important to get these stories out more and more. We want, yes, justice for John O'Keefe and for Helena Hudgens. So please, if you can, just take a minute to give a like. It doesn't cost anything. But if you do want to make a donation, I have the Cash App QR code however I can get my finger pointed the right way in the top corner. You can make a donation there. And if you leave a note, I will read your note at the end of every video and include your name in the credits as well, too, as my way of saying thank you so much. As we continue growing this community, I'm working on a few ways to give back to you guys in the community more. So if you want to be a part of that, just continue following along. All proceeds, anything that gets donated directly to me, I will take 20% at the end of every single day and donate 20% to the Karen Read Defense Fund. Or if you feel more comfortable making your donation directly to the Karen Read Defense Fund, totally cool. I will include that link below as well for you. All right, thanks so guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.